Everyone, Sandra Madaffrey. Hope everyone's great this morning and welcome to another webinar. I'm just going to get myself set up. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Monday morning webinar. Just going to get myself set up. I'm going to put the chat box up. So for anyone who's in here, if you want to communicate with me, please ask away any questions. And I'm just going to get the slideshow going for today. Beautiful. So welcome everyone. Nice to have you here again on another Monday morning. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about easy webinars and how I basically run my webinars. A couple of years ago, I was really very reluctant to run any webinars. I jumped on a couple of courses and things that people did, and they made the webinars sound so incredibly confusing that I actually decided that I was never going to run one. So what I have done since then is have a look at how to break a webinar down so that it doesn't have to be incredibly complicated. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about different webinars. This particular webinar that I run every Monday morning, it's only 30 minutes. So it's something that's quick, sharp and short, and, you know, orientated on one specific topic, and then cut back even more to make it only 30 minutes. So we're going to talk a little bit about webinars and the difference between having a 30-minute, a 60-minute webinar, having something that goes for a couple of hours as well, because I've run them all. But the format is basically the same. It's more in how much content that you actually put into the webinars that makes the difference. So let's start. Anyone who is watching on Facebook, jump on, register, and you can have a look at what we do. So again, anyone who's here on the chat, please ask questions if there's anything you don't understand. Good morning, hi Ree, how are you going? So what and why of webinars? Okay, so a webinar is a seminar that's held online. So very important for anyone who didn't do webinars or has never done webinars. This has become the way we're doing things now, and especially here in Melbourne, this is the only way we can do things. So basically it is a talk, a networking event that you can have online. So that's the official meaning of what a webinar is, a seminar held over the web. Now, there are two types of webinars you can have. One is a meeting where participants are all on the screen at the same time. So straight after this, I have a virtual coffee webinar at 11 o'clock and everyone's on the screen at the same time. They're called meetings, but a webinar is basically what I'm doing right now, which is just the host on the screen. So you can see me on the screen, I'm sharing my screen, I'm sharing the slides. So you can also, if you want to not have your face on a webinar, and the way you do that is you just turn off your video. Okay, so there's lots of things that you can do, but basically you just need to know the difference between the meeting and a webinar, and really it's up to you how you run this. On these 30-minute ones, because I don't have a lot of time to give you what I need to give you in value, I don't have other people on the screen. But in the meetings where you want to be a little bit more interactive with your clients and you want more feedback, you would more than likely have a meeting. But just be aware that if you record anything, that in a meeting scenario that people's faces will be on there, and you need to let them know, especially if you're going to use that recording for anything. Now, because I then use this recording to send out to anyone who's not on here today, and I put it up and use it in other social media aspects or get people to jump into them, I don't put other people's faces on. It's not a nice thing to do, to put other people's faces on your videos that you're going to share without their permission. So why webinars? It establishes you as an expert when it comes to the field that you're working in. Okay, so for me, I'm working with people establishing businesses. I teach people how to do webinars. This is showing you that I know what I'm talking about. Not only are you seeing me run the webinar, but you're also, I'm establishing myself as an expert. So that's why one of the reasons why you would be wanting to run a webinar. I also get to tape it. There's many people at once. There's a few people on this. There's a few and lots of people that have registered, which will receive this through the email list as well. So it gets me to be able to speak to many people in one hit. It gives you a wider market to global. In fact, my webinars are now being watched. I've got people registering from these all over the world, and most of them are asleep at this time, so they get to watch the replays. Occasionally I do get people to jump on and see them as well. And for anyone who is, there's a few people on Facebook. If you register, there's a link in the title of this video. Jump over and you can have a look at what's going on in the actual webinar, and you get to see all the PowerPoints. They also help you make sales, grow your email lists, build trust and rapport with your potential clients. And building trust these days is without a doubt one of the most important things that you need to do with your client, with your future clients. There is so much noise on social media that the only way that people are going to be able to trust you is if they get to see that you actually are an expert in what you do. So webinars help you with all these things, plus many, many more things. In the fact that I'm sitting in my office at the moment, bringing you this is a benefit for me because I don't have to leave the house. So there's lots of reasons why webinars are really, really good and very effective as well. Okay. And there's no expense apart from the fact that I've got a paid expense account for Zoom. But if anyone wants to ask me any questions about that, I'm part of an organisation where I only pay $10 American a month for Zoom, which gives me 500 people in my meetings and 500 people in my webinars. If anyone wants to know more about that, let me know. But that is the only expense. So it's about $15 a month to run Zoom. But you can get also Zoom for free. But of course, things, I'm not sure about some of the other platforms, but remember that when you have something for free, there is limitations to them. Okay, but if you're starting out, you're not going to run long webinars, you can have a look at that option. Okay, so what do you need to do before you run a webinar? There's a couple of things when you're thinking about running a webinar that you need to start with. And one is your topic. What are you going to talk about? And you need a catchy and to the point heading. Okay, one things that you don't want is to do long headings, long explanations. The title to this one was Webinars Made Easy. Okay, so what was my topic? I'm going to show you how to create easy webinars. So pick a topic. Now, the shorter the webinar, the shorter, the quicker, the more condensed the topic needs to be. The longer the webinar, the more you can put into it. Like when I do my 7 steps to living with intention webinar, I can never do that in less than an hour. If I want to go more in detail into the 7 steps, then I need to go into a couple of hours. And in fact, I have run three of those steps in a half-day, 3-hour workshop webinar. So you need to think about what's the topic. You need to think of a nice catchy title and what is the outcome. Sorry about that noise. If you can hear it, that's just my printer. Not that I'm printing, it's deciding to recalibrate itself. So these are the 3 important things before you start. Your topic, the title that you're going to put, and what's the outcome. What are you teaching? What do you want to teach? And those 3 go in hand. Okay. Remember your color branding. You'll see every week, guys, that I use the same screens in my webinars. Every single webinar still has this PowerPoint facet. You can, if you want to go even more fancy, if you've got your own color branding, you can actually create in PowerPoint your own slides and things like that. But remember your color branding, it's important. It's what you get to, people get to know you with, and who your target audience is, because that's who you'll want to be looking at marketing this to. Okay, and the length of your webinar. These are the few things that you need to really get into your head before you start any webinar, and make sure that when you create a webinar or a webinar series, that you're targeting the same audience, that you're using your constant color theme, so that when people see it, they know, oh, that's you. Okay. Is it a lot like your ebook training you did, so ebooks can become webinar? 100%. Esther, I'm all about repurposing everything that I do. You might notice that what usually happens is I have an ebook that's coming out very soon, which is actually an ebook that was written from one of these webinars a few weeks ago. I sent out an email letter yesterday, which was based on one of these webinars I did a few weeks ago. That email post is now being put into a LinkedIn post. I repurpose everything. When you have a target audience and you solve a particular pain point, the content is basically the same all the time. You just need to move it around and learn how to repurpose it. And you use the same content over and over again in different ways. So I hope that makes sense. Absolutely. This particular webinar might turn into a post or an ebook later on. So that you don't want to be constantly reinventing the wheel. One of the things that a lot of people, where they get stuck when it becomes to anything, social media posts, webinars, anything at all, they get stuck on having to continuously come up with new content. I'll tell you now that my VAs will look at any Facebook lives I do, these webinars that I do, and they create all my posts continuously. And we have continuous posts happening from these lives that I do. So absolutely, you can repurpose absolutely everything. So I hope that answered your question. Okay. And the other thing you want to consider is whether you're going to charge. So when I do these webinars, they're for free. When I do a 1 hour webinar, it's usually for free. If I do something longer than that, where I'm teaching something a little bit more specific, then I might do a very low cost. So that's something you need to come up with yourself as well, whether you want to do something for free or a low cost. Okay. The next thing is you need to schedule your webinar. You need to understand when you're going to do it, and you need to have a certain amount of lead up. Now, these webinars that I do on a Monday, we only advertise them on Thursdays. We start the advertising campaign. Why? Because this is something that I do every single Monday, and people know I do this every Monday now, and they come looking for it. But if you're doing an ad hoc type of webinar, you need to create a schedule, an advertising campaign. And when I say advertising, it doesn't have to be paid advertising. It can be organic advertising through social media, but you need a lead up into it. Now, the one good thing about webinars is that you don't need as much of a lead up into a webinar that you do if you were doing an actual physical event. Okay, so 7 days before for short events, 30 minutes. I don't even do that anymore. The first time I started doing these, we were doing 7 days, but now I don't even do that. Though the next 2 weeks webinars, I've already got them down pat. My VA in some groups will start advertising them today, but in my own groups, with my community, Thursday, Friday, we usually let people know what is the next webinar because people know it's here. But if you're wanting something a little bit longer, at least a 14-day lead up for free longer events, up to about 90 minutes or so, and 4 weeks for something even longer. So if you're going to do something like a 3 hour, half-day workshop as a webinar, you want to be giving it about a 4-week lead up. And you want to, and if it's paid, you want to be giving it about 4 weeks as well. Okay, so if you have any questions, guys, please ask. But it's not as necessary when you're doing webinars because people are in the comfort of their own home. You'll find a lot of people will register and actually not turn up for the webinar either because they can't. But this is a great way when someone is busy to still be able to see what you do. So you need to give people time to be able to register. Okay. So you need to have a look at the logistics behind it. So what registration link? You will always need a registration link so that people that aren't going to be able to be there can register. So everyone who's registered for this webinar who can't be here, and I've gotten quite a few messages from people saying they can't be here, they will all receive the recording of this webinar. Okay, so you need your registration links. You need to think about whether you have passwords or not. In your emails that with the registration links, especially these days. I don't worry about it so much at the moment, but I know people that have been hacked. So have a think about whether you need a password or not to get into your webinar. Groups, make sure that you schedule and you post things like this in your groups. You know, this is the best place to advertise webinars and things that you're doing is in people's groups. I often say to the people in my groups, you've got every Friday to let people know what your next week's events are. So please use groups. They are the best way for you to advertise and your webinars moving forward, and also in your email lists. Sending your email list, and everyone who's in here who is in my email list, if you're not, you will be after today, but anyone who's been in my email list will have received yesterday an email from me with a registration link telling them about this webinar. Okay, so these are the sort of things that you need to get organized before you start to schedule. Now, the actual webinar itself, have you noticed a better call to action? Sorry, let me just action when people are live at your webinar or are viewed later. It doesn't matter, Esther. I seem to get the same sort of action from both. It just depends. My calls to action are slightly different on different webinars. On a short webinar like this, I have a very soft call to action. And on a bigger webinar, I will have a more prominent call to action, you know, 24 hours. And is there a difference? Not really, not for me. I find that people will if they're interested, they will call to action regardless. So I hope that makes sense. But usually, from what I know from other clients, their call to action when people are live is much better. Okay, so the first way you do this is brain dump everything that, it's very similar to the ebook last week. Brain dump everything that you want in your webinar. Now remember, you're going to have time constraints. I could teach 2 to 3 hours on how to create a webinar. But because this is 30 minutes of content, I brain dumped what's the most important things that I can fit into 30 minutes. So brain dump everything that you need, right? Then create the order. What do we need first? What do we need second? What do I need to teach you third? Okay? Use bullet points. Quick fast. Like I said, this is 30 minutes. You can expand on your bullet points if you go into longer. And of course, if you're doing a half day, a 3-hour webinar, you can expand even further. Okay, keep it short. The other thing you don't want to do in a webinar is go into long-winded stuff, even when you're having a 2 or 3 hour workshop type webinar. People will be bored. Okay, there's a little bit of a difference between being in the room with someone and being outside of the room. I found that running my longer webinars, when people are not in the room, I have to keep them constantly doing something and motivated. And I tend to do more a meeting style for those rather than a webinar like this, especially if you are doing a webinar like this where you've only got yourself in the corner. Okay, you want to keep it short, sharp, and bang, 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 or people are going to lose interest. So keep that in mind. If you're doing something a little bit longer, you might want to make it a little bit more interactive. Okay, create your PowerPoint. Right, you always use nice graphics and use graphics that go with what you're talking about. Right now you can see I said brain dump. So there's all the little Post-it notes which represent brain dumping on Post-it notes. So make sure the graphics are always, match the content. And it's sometimes it's really, really lots of fun to actually use some funny graphics. Whenever I can, I'll use a funny graphic. Okay. One of the other things that you really want to put into a webinar is proof. Okay. And about you. Now, I have a little rule here. I'm not going to do an about me on a 30-minute webinar. There's no time. And one that I constantly do every week. People don't need to hear about me every single webinar when I'm doing these constant. But if you're doing a longer webinar, whenever I do anything 60 minutes and above, I always have an about me section at the beginning of the webinar. Always, always, always. Now, I make it short. I don't sit there talking about myself. I'm just trying to establish expertise to show people what my story is, to incorporate what I do, to add my relevant qualifications and add my real life story. Okay, just so that people know where I'm coming from, because what I teach, sustainable businesses for wellness practitioners, holistic therapists, I've already done that. So I'm going to show people what my qualifications are, what I do, my real life story, how I went from nothing at all to where I am now. But for longer webinars, I wouldn't be doing it in something like this where I'm just doing tidbits every single Monday. You would just turn off if I did the same thing every week. So keep that in mind. Okay, and make sure that the about you is relevant to what your webinar is as well. Okay, and put that right at the beginning. You can put in things like who is the webinar for if you want to, but I don't normally do that. I've seen people do that a lot, but I actually don't do this, because if I'm running a long webinar, okay, who is the webinar for is already in my advertising schedule rather than doing it and wasting time in the webinar. That's my way of thinking. It doesn't have to be like that for anyone, for other people, but that's the way I run my webinars, and they seem to work really, really well. Okay. At any time through the webinar, you can do this at the beginning or at the end. You can put in your case studies. There's nothing better than case studies and testimonials. Please, if you use people's names, or even if you don't use people's names, ask people if it is okay to use their testimonials. So important. I've had people use my testimonials without my name, but like private messages that I've sent people saying, oh, that was really good. I've said, you need to ask. Okay, so you need to ask people if, of course, they've got a testimonial on your page or they've posted publicly. You can use that, but I would still think it's nice to ask people if you can use their testimonials. Okay, If you've got any statistics, use statistics as well. Or if you're talking about something in particular, you might want to use statistics. Okay, and here's just some of my testimonials. Okay, this is just how I put them up. These are just testimonial after testimonial of people that have worked with me. And you can see that we've gotten rid of their names. I've asked them. Okay, so that's just how you would do that. Encourage audience participations to ask questions and encourage chat. So if you're in a meeting scenario, it's going to be a little bit easier because everyone's on the screen. In this one, you will always hear me say, hi guys, you know, put anything that you would like, ask me any questions in the chat box, okay? This is a short webinar. If you're doing a longer webinar, you don't want to be not in a part, you know, trying to get some participation. People will drop off, they will get bored, okay? So really important to understand. And at the end, make an offer. Now, at the beginning of the webinar, tell people you're going to make an offer, okay? If you're doing a webinar to sign people into something big, you want to be telling them, stay till the end, there's going to be a bonus, okay? Now, I'm not going to do that so much in here because, again, this is the outcome of this webinar is a little bit different to the outcome of other webinars. So you have to work out what your outcome is. So if I do a webinar where then I want to sell people into a program that I'm doing, then I do say to people at the beginning, stay till the end, I've got a great bonus for you. Okay, make the offer, add the bonus for watching. So in other words, what I do is add a time frame. So when I do a big webinar or I do a three-hour workshop and I want people to sign into something else, I might say to them, right, for the next 24 hours, if you book into my workshop, you might get $100 off, or you might get a bonus of something else, whatever you want to do. But what I want to say here, guys, and this is for people that watch the replay as well. So you want to say, you know, for 24 hours from the webinar or 48 hours. Now you've got to stick to these time frames, guys. If someone comes to you after that, you've got to be a little bit hard and say, sorry, you've missed the break. It's really important that when you say something, you need to stick to it because it just establishes integrity as well for you. Okay. Email the registries. Everyone who's registered today gets the recording of this email. And the next day, when especially you're doing a bigger webinar, not so much for this one, okay? Though you will see that you will get a small offer, book a call with me, okay? Because this is all I'm doing with these. It's about booking a call with me to see how I can help you further in your business. The next day, you want to send an offer with those big webinars. When you're doing a big webinar, the next day you want to remind them the 24 hours or the 48 hours is up. And for anyone who watches this who has been on some of my bigger webinars will know that I do that. Like I said, there's a little bit of a different, different outcome for me for these shorter webinars, so I don't do that. So you've got to think, what is it that you want? Okay. So guys, that's it again. The 30 minutes, it flies by every week, and that's why I keep them so short and sweet. So if you follow that very easy, those few steps, you will be able to create a very easy webinar for yourself. You don't need to do fancy things. You just need to make sure that you do the webinar and follow those steps. And if you stick to those steps, they are basically the foundations of any good webinar. Make sure you get yourself out there so people know you're having it. There's no point doing a webinar unless people know that you're having it. So the advertising schedule in groups, your groups if you've got them, or other people's groups on your Facebook page, on your Facebook profile, are the most important things to get the people in the webinar first of all, and then follow the steps of how to do your webinar. And when I say thinking about your color branding, you need to make sure that the advertising schedule that you have actually suits that color branding. You will see that pretty much every single thing I do is green. Green is one of my favorite colors these days. I'm not sure why. It used to be purple, but now it's green. And that's what I wanted to be my branding color. So pretty much everything I do has green. Okay. So thank you again for watching. If you have any questions, you can email me at admin@sandramadaffrey.com.au, or you can find me. You've noticed all the color green. Yes. Yeah, Ree, that's my branding, and we're moving. As I'm reinventing myself at the moment, because I am going through a business shift, so you will notice that everything becomes green. Everything. There's only a couple of things. I do a little bit of pink as well, which is more for the more heart-centered type stuff, and some of the trainings that I do. And the only thing I ever do in blue is my NLP training. All the slides and everything is, but the advertising is always green. It becomes, you know, like when you look at something like McDonald's, you know, or even have a look here, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram are absolutely noticeable immediately. So really important that you get yourself some sort of branding color, and eventually get yourself a logo and use that, because people will see that straight away. So again, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see if you want to jump on in half an hour, 11 o'clock, we've got our coffee catch up where we come together as a little group. I brought those back because people were asking for them every Monday at 11 at the moment. But like I said, you can contact me. You can find me on any of these, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram under my name, Sandra Madaffrey. If you would like to know more, like I said, every week, these half an hours are a tip of the iceberg. I do have a business mastermind where I go really deep, not into the business, not just into the business strategies, but also all the mindset and everything else with clients to create sustainable six-figure businesses. It's great to say create a six-figure business, but you have to be able to sustain it and maintain it along the way, which is something that I have done now for a couple of years in a row, and now moving into multiple six figures as I grow. So if you want to know what I've done, that's what I teach, and I work with an amazing group of mastermind clients at the moment who are creating their sustainable businesses. Just let me know, book a clarity call. We have a no obligation free chat with me to see if we are the right fit and if I can indeed help you. So that's it for me this week. Can you believe, guys, I cannot remember what my topic is for next week, but that's okay. 10 o'clock every single Monday, I'm here doing these little tidbits. So I hope you can join me again next week. I'm going to stop the share. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I look forward to seeing you again next week with the next tidbit, and you will all receive an email with this recording very, very soon, and also a link to how you can book a call or how you can send me a message or a question via email. Thanks for watching, everyone, guys. It's been a pleasure as usual, and I look forward to seeing you again all next week. Bye for now.